I grew up in a family where Sunday morning was really important, and not only on Sunday morning, but even on Saturday, my parents started preparing for Sunday. I'm thankful that that was the case because it made Sunday really special. But my job on Saturday night was to make sure that my dad, my mom, me, and my sister had clean, polished shoes for Sunday morning. That was my job. So I would take my dad's shoes and I would buff them, and I took my mom's shoes and I would clean them, and my sister's shoes I would polish with that bottle that had the sponge on the end, and you had to polish them, and then I would do the same with mine. When I was a boy, a fairly young boy, my dad taught me how to do that, and that was my job. And I did it, not because I loved doing it, but I did it because I was afraid not to. I did not want my dad to practice the laying on of hands. So I did it. I didn't love it, but I did it. And then I found out a few years later that kids in my neighborhood and some of the kids at church were actually getting paid to do chores. What we called an allowance. And so I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I think I ought to be paid for doing the shoes. I mean, I'm doing work and I do it every week, and I think you ought to pay me. And Dad said, yeah, I think you're old enough to handle that and be responsible for money. Yeah, I'll give you an allowance. So I got an allowance, part of which was for polishing, cleaning shoes. I grew up and I got married. Paula and I came back to visit with my parents and stayed in the house. And on Saturday night, I just got this idea, and I got my dad's shoes, and I got my mom's shoes. My sister was married and away, so I didn't get hers. But I polished their shoes and put them back where they were supposed to be for Sunday morning. I didn't do it because I was afraid my dad would whip me if I didn't, nor did I do it for some paltry allowance. I did it, I think, just to say, I appreciate you and I love you, and I'm grateful for what you've done for me. The youngest Ralph Walker could have never said that. The middle Ralph Walker couldn't have said that. The youngest Ralph Walker didn't know what reward was about. He only knew punishment. And I think there's a sense in which those are the three levels of obedience to God. I think for many of us, and I've heard a lot of other people say this, when I first became a Christian, I became a Christian because I was afraid I would die and go to hell. I was scared. And then others said, well, no, I realized what I had done, and I did it because I wanted to go to heaven. And sometimes the people that said I was afraid when I became a Christian say, yeah, I grew into that. But I think the most mature level of doing what we do in obedience is out of love. We don't sing a whole lot of songs about going to hell. There are some. There are some verses. There's a great day coming, or there's a sad day coming when the sinner shall hear his doom depart. I know you not. Or almost persuaded, harvest is past. Almost persuaded, doom comes at last. We do sing a few songs about hell, but not very many. We sing a lot of songs about reward. Mansions over the hilltop. I'll meet you inside the eastern gate. You know, when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. We sing a lot of songs. I'll fly away, that talk about the reward that we get. if we'll do what God tells us to do. But I want to suggest that the ultimate motive for doing what God tells us to do is love. Now, I've given you already that concept. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13 says, fear God and keep his commandments. That's a pretty basic level. In Matthew chapter 19 and verse 27, Peter said, Lord, where shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. In other words, we've given up everything to follow you. What will be ours for doing that? What reward do we get? But it's really interesting that just before John chapter 15, where we're going to be in a moment, John chapter 14 really emphasizes love as the motive for doing what God wants us to do. In John 14, verse 15, Jesus says, if you love me, what? You'll keep my commandments. You will. You will keep my commandments. If what? If you love me. And verse 23 says, not verse 23, verse 24 says, he who does not love me does not keep my words, and the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me. And just above that in verse 23, if anyone loves me, he'll keep my word. If you love me, you'll do what I say do. You'll do that. And then that brings us to chapter 15. So now for the first time, I've already told you. I've already given it to you if you haven't gotten it yet. The secret to obeying is loving. But now when I read it, I want you to see if you can find the verses that are key to giving that concept, okay? So sharpen your eyes and your mind. I'm going to begin reading verse 1 of chapter 15. See if you can find the verses that say the key and the secret to obedience is love. I'm the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I've spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As a branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, he bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away as a branch, and he dries up, and they gather them and cast them into the fire, and they're burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it'll be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. Just as the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I've kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I've spoken to you, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be made full. You see it? It's in verses 9 and 10. As the Father loved me, I've loved you. Abide in my love. We've said this. The secret of living is fruit bearing. The secret to fruit bearing is abiding. The secret to abiding is obeying. And the secret to obeying is loving. Verse 10, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, as I've kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. The secret of obeying is loving. And let me just let me just suggest why love is the greatest motive for obedience. Why it is a greater, more perfect and pure and powerful source of obedience than either reward or fear. It is because love centers on the giver, not the gifts. Love centers on the giver, not the gifts. The reward-motivated person is focusing on what I get. The love-motivated person is focusing on the recipient of the gifts. If I focused on the gift itself, on Paula's birthday or our anniversaries, I might buy her a gun or fishing tackle if I'm a fisherman or a hunter, because that would be the kind of gift I might want. That would be the kind of reward I might want. But if I focus on her, I know those things don't matter to her. If I focus on God as the recipient of my love and attention, I will give to him what he desires, not what I think he wants. I won't make the mistake Cain made in Genesis chapter 4. I won't make that mistake. So we had this dog. When the girls were small, we bought a dog so that they could learn how to take care of a pet and become comfortable. We went to the pound to get this dog, and I chose a dog that I thought would be appreciative of the fact that without us, he probably would have been euthanized. But the dog never seemed to really get that mercy. He was he wasn't a real intelligent dog. He was a cur, a mixed breed, and I'm not even sure what those were. We named him Zero because he was the color of a Zero candy bar. But I think that was his intelligence quotient. He wasn't a real bright dog. And we had a rule that he couldn't eat food off the table. No table food. He couldn't jump up. We would discipline him if he jumped up trying to get anywhere near the table. But every once in a while, we'd vacate the table and go into the living room, which was around behind a wall. You couldn't see the table from there. And we'd be doing something in the living room, having not cleared off the table. And all of a sudden, we'd hear the clatter of forks or dinnerware and atrocious eating. And I would go in there and call his name, slap my hands, Zero, Zero. And he would immediately lay on his back with his feet up in the air, like, I don't know what came over me. I don't know why I did this. Well, I did. It was because he wasn't as concerned about his master as he was about the gifts, the blessings of being able to eat that food. I contrast him with something I saw when I was in Chicago. I went to the museum there in Chicago, and they had this massive display of the ruins of Pompeii. You remember Pompeii was covered by lava when Mount Vesuvius overflowed and destroyed Pompeii. And there is a replica. These weren't the exact things. Most of these were replicas. There's a replica there of a Roman soldier who fell over in the lava, died, and next to him, not in a fleeing position, but with his paws underneath him, there's a dog that, according to the information, died at his master's feet. That dog so loved and was so loyal to his master, he allowed lava to cover him and kill him when his master dropped dead, maybe from a blow to the head from some of the rocks that were there. I know a dog isn't physically capable or emotionally capable of truly loving. It's a loyalty. But that's the way I want to be with my God. I want to be so loyal to him that I don't think in terms of my own life and gifts and blessings as much as I think about what matters to him and my nearness to him. I love Job, who demonstrates that same kind of thing in Job chapter 1 when he's lost absolutely everything. I mean, it's just, and one after another. You know, we talk about cases where somebody they get a blow after blow after blow, and we say, boy, I don't know how you can deal with that. I don't know anybody that dealt with more blows to his ego and well-being and heart and mind than Job. Emotionally, he lost his children. Financially, he lost all his cattle. He lost materially all of his goods around him. All of these things Job lost, and he lost the support and loyalty of his wife, and then he lost his physical health. And you know what he says about all that? The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. How do you do that? Well, I'll tell you what, you don't do that if you're motivated by fear. And you don't do that if you're motivated by reward, because there's no reward in that for Job. But you can say that if you're motivated by love. I love God. I don't understand everything that's happening, but I will do what he wants me to do. Love centers on the giver, not the gifts. And love doesn't measure sacrifice. Love gives everything. In the Song of Solomon, chapter 8 and verse 7, this is such a great statement. Many waters cannot quench love, nor will rivers overflow it. If a man were to give all the riches of his house for love, it would be utterly despised. You know what we call somebody who gives love for money? A prostitute. You can't buy love. You can't say, will you love me? I'll give you $100. I'll give you $1,000. Love is such that it does not measure sacrifice. It doesn't measure that. People will die for somebody they love. We've seen that happen over and over. Somebody taking a bullet for somebody else. We use that phrase, but that literally happens because we love the individual we're trying to save or try to help. There is this great story. I read it years ago in Reader's Digest, and I've never forgotten it. It was about a doctor who was in Korea. And there was a little Korean girl that was in need of a blood transfusion. And they were trying to match her blood, and they found that she had a brother 1 year older than her who was an exact match in blood for her. So they told the little boy that we're going to need to do this. Your sister needs blood or she will die. And so we're going to take some of your blood and we're going to give it to her so that she can live. Would you do that? And he willingly agreed. Yes, he would do that. So they did the best they could, but they inserted the needle and they started the transfusion. In this case, it was a direct transfusion to his sister. And then the doctor who wrote this story said he noticed a little boy beginning to tear. Tears were rolling down his cheeks, just a little. And he thought maybe the needle was hurting. He said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, what's the matter? What's bothering you?" And he said, "How soon will I die?" And he said, You're not going to die." And he said, "I thought I was giving my blood to my sister." Isn't that an incredible sacrifice? That little boy said, "I will give my life for my sister." Love doesn't measure gifts like that. Love that calculates isn't very deep. That's why it's the best motive for obedience. And I'll suggest this to you like I did about the obedience in the last lesson. Love is the best motive for obeying because love motivates God's actions. Everything God has done for us has been motivated, as Brent has talked about already this morning, motivated by his love for us. God is what? Love. God is love. It is his motivation. It is his impetus. It is his very nature. All that he does is motivated by love for us. Think about it. Why did God create the world and us? Love. It's the only answer that makes sense. Why did God give us laws? Oh, man. You know, it's only when you're mature that you begin to understand that. When I was a boy, I thought my parents, periodically went into a room and they had a conference with each other and they said something like this. My mom said, "Ralph is just way too happy. I think we need to make some more laws. I just think it's time to make some more laws because he's just too happy. It's time to make him miserable." I thought laws were like that. I thought they were just, I can't do this. I have to do that. And it's only after you mature that you realize the laws are given for our benefit. We may not always see it that way, and we may not always like it, but that's why they're given. Why did God give us laws? Because he loves us. Why did God give his son to die in our place? It's not because you and I are better quality people than his son. Far from that. That's the very point Brent was making. We all are like Adam. We're all flawed. We're all out of order and in need of repair. But it was because God loved us. And like that little boy who was willing to give his life for his sister, Jesus did for his sisters and brothers. Literally died that we might live. For what reason? Love. And why give us this word? Why give us this Bible? I got to tell you, if ever there was a love letter written to the world, it's this. It's this. This is the greatest love letter that's ever been written. Because it says from beginning to end, God thinks you're valuable. God so loved the world. To what degree? That he gave us his son and this word about him. And then I would suggest, finally, love is a fulfillment of the law. James chapter 2, verse 8 says that. Romans chapter 13, verses 8 and 10 say that. Romans 13, verse 8, "Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another, for he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law." And verse 10 says, "Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law." I love thy law. I love thy law. It's my meditation all the days. Look, what if a husband and wife were only motivated to treat the other with love only? There was no selfishness, there was no flawed character. Everything the husband did for the wife was motivated by his wanting best for her. What if a parent and a child had that kind of relationship? The parent said, everything I do will be done because I love you and want the best for you. And the child says, you know what? I feel the same way. Everything I do, Mom, Dad, is going to be done because I love you. Everything. I will only be motivated by that. Can you imagine what those relationships would be like? Can you imagine what our relationships with our neighbors would be like if we were only motivated by love for them? You know, imagine what it would be like coming to a four-way stop with four people motivated totally by love for the others. They'd never leave the intersection. No, you go. No, you go. Love you. Go. Go. Love you. You go. No, you go. Yo, you. They'd die there. I'm going to suggest something to you. I don't believe we'd need laws at all. If we were totally motivated by love, we wouldn't need laws, ordinances that tell us to turn the music down after 11 o'clock, laws that tell us not to let our trees impinge on our neighbors' lots, laws that tell us that we're not to abuse our wives or husbands or our children, laws that tell us we have to pay back debt we owe to others. If love was the only thing that motivated us, we don't need civil laws. The reason we need them is because we're not motivated like that. And I don't propose that everybody is so motivated. I know I'm not, and Paula would say amen. But if I could only learn to love like that. It's so interesting that the book of Exodus urges obedience by the Israelites. They've just come out of Egypt. And Exodus urges obedience out of fear. I mean, the first thing they do is they come to Mount Sinai. And how does God appear at Mount Sinai? He's on a volcanic mountain. I mean, it's rumbling and thundering and clouded and lightning and fire coming out of it. What is that? What is that? Look, I don't mean to demean it, but God is, in reality, what the Wizard of Oz is in that story. The wizard wants people to fear him, so he concocts this situation where he's the great and terrible Oz. But God is that. He's not playing. He's not posing. He is not acting. He is saying, this is a side of me. You people have come out of this land where you've been slaves and taken care of by others and demeaned and belittled. I'm bringing you out, but you better listen to me. You better listen. But by the time they get through the wilderness and they come to Deuteronomy, because that's the last book Moses wrote before they went into the land of promise, do you know what the motive is in Deuteronomy? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. It's no wonder that Jesus quotes Deuteronomy more than any other Old Testament book. It is because that whole tenor of the book is not do this or else, but it is do this and enjoy the blessings of my love if you will love me. So we sing this song. I love the song, Savior, Teach Me Day by Day. It has this great phrase. It says this: love in loving finds its employment, finds its work or duty. In obedience, all her joy. Isn't that a great phrase? Love, in loving, finds her work in obedience that results in all of her joy. It is possible to know God's law by heart without knowing the heart of God. So I want to close with this. If love is the root of what we do, obedience is going to be the fruit. It's going to be what motivates us. Love motivates us to create that fruit, because if we love God, we'll obey Him. And if we obey Him, we'll abide in Him. And if we abide in Him, we'll bear fruit for Him. And if we bear fruit for Him, wow, we will have life abundant. So I close with one more story. I read this years ago. A man was washing a brand new car he had. And a boy came by and he said, "Hey, mister, that's beautiful. Where'd you get that car?" Only a kid would ask a question like that. And the man said, "Well," he said, "my brother gave it to me." What do you think the boy said? The man relating this said, "I thought he would say, 'Boy, I wish I had a car like that.' Or, 'I wish I had a brother like that.'" He said, "I was floored when the boy said, 'I wish I could be a brother like that.'" That's love. That's how it works. And the more we love God, the more and the deeper our obedience will be, which leads to abiding, which leads to fruit bearing, which leads to living. Tonight at 5, I'll offer you the last secret. How do we learn to love God like that? We'll share that together. Thanks for listening. We'll stand adjourned. Anything you need? We're good. Thank you.